the greatest truths and the most eternal wisdom, which should not be adjusted and need not be adjusted with time, because being eternal, of course, means unaffected by time. So it will be true and valid at all times, and yet it needs to be readjusted or reapplied from time to time. Because although the truth doesn't change, that which is holy and godly doesn't change, but the ungodly does change. Time has an effect on the ungodly. So if we are to apply the truths and the eternal wisdoms of Torah to our time, it has to apply to the weaknesses, the unholiness, the darkness of our time. And we need somebody to do that, to apply that to us with our problems, because we might not have the same weaknesses or the same temptations that existed in the past. And we need to know whether we're applying these eternal absolute truths correctly to our context, to our lives, to our weaknesses, so that they have the proper effect.
Are we talking about the evolution of faith, the evolution of Judaism, how it's not stagnant, how it's something that's plastic and changes over time?
It's a question of can we live with this? Knowing the truth is only half the solution. It is half the solution, but it's only half the solution. Can we live with this truth? Because sometimes knowing the truth simply interferes with your life, because it doesn't fit. Your life is not about truth. It's got other issues. Knowing what the truth is and knowing that that's not what your life is all about, just creates some discomfort and some frustrations that just interfere with your life. It doesn't help you. It just makes you, it doesn't stop you from sinning, it just takes the fun out of it. So how do we apply what is true to our lives so that they become some kind of a harmonious whole, so that the life becomes a little more true and the true becomes a little more of my life, and not just opposite poles.
What are we talking about exactly? Is it that the kind of thing that people say about pork, for example, that, well, I understand that thousands of years ago it made sense not to eat pork because they didn't have fridges, but today we have fridges and so it's okay to eat pork? Is that the kind of thing we're talking about? The Torah should change, should have changed over time?
Well, but what you're describing is the rationalization that follows the problem. The problem is not that I don't see the need for the kosher law. It's that I'm not comfortable with laws. I want to eat what I want. Why should I be restricted?
So this is a problem that people would have had at Mount Sinai as well, not just thousands of years later, right?
Not really, because they were slaves. Freedom was not a big issue back then. And being able to do what you choose to do or what you feel like doing was not even a popular thing. I mean, even in his criticism, Moshe says to the people, there was a time when, before you grew up and before you knew what you were doing, and every ish kol hayosher be'einav yaseh, everybody was doing what they thought was right. Nobody felt entitled to sin. They each did what they thought was right. But the idea that I can do whatever I want, where did that come from?
Different. Is that different? How is that different? That you do what you think is right. Is that a matter of being dedicated to a system of ideals?
Yeah, your behavior had to be justified. You can't just say, I want to. On what grounds? Who said? Where is it written? Right? Where is it written? So I just want to. That was unheard of. Unheard of. In Russia, under the Tsar, under communism, do what you want? it wasn't part of life.
That,
well, don't do what you
it's
want.
definitely a modern phenomenon. There's no question.
Yeah.
Probably since the French Revolution, I imagine.
Yes.
The idea that freedom.
The Renaissance.
Yeah, yeah.
So this idea that every individual has the individual right to do whatever they feel like doing,
Yeah.
that's a whole new problem. And of course, then we rationalize it with arguments like refrigerators and that kind of stuff. But that's not where it's coming from. It's not like somebody sat there and stunned, like, whoa, we have refrigerators. No, it's I want to eat what I want to eat. What about those laws? I'll find a way to explain them, to dismiss them, to ease my conscience. But basically, I'm going to eat what I want to eat. That's a whole new thing. Now, even in the Torah, see, there's a natural phenomenon. A person will be affected deeply, truly, if you reason with him on his level. You appeal to him. If he senses that you know him, you understand his issues, and you give him wisdom with which to deal with those issues, you've got him. He's sold, and he will behave the way you've taught him.
Right.
That's an effective teacher. But a book can't have that effect. First of all, because the book was written by an individual from a certain perspective. It might not be your perspective. You don't get the sense that he knows you. In fact, sometimes you get the distinct impression that he's in a different world. I mean, what is he talking about?
It's interesting. The Alter Rebbe mentions this in the beginning of the Tanya, in the preface, right? He says that I'm not sure how effective books are going to be.
Particularly if they're replacing a visit.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? The Tanya was written to replace
Yeah.
a personal visit. Don't have to come visit, just read what
I said, yeah.
But reading it from a book is not the same. Well, that must have been, I can just imagine, God spoke to Avraham, God appeared to Yitzchak, and God said to Yaakov. And then his descendants gather at Mount Sinai, and God says, hang on, I'll write you something. And the people must have argued then, at least in their minds, whoa, 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 whoa. No more visits?
That's right.
Now I'm going to read it from a book? It's not the same.
At least a movie would have been better.
A movie
God
version.
forbid.
So that's possibly why God says, right at the beginning, I am God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. We know each other. I got you. I understand you. And if you look at what the Torah says about God's response to the conditions in Egypt, it says specifically, God heard their cries and God knew. V'yeda Hashem, and God knew. Das, by the way, is a very personal insight. It's not some academic piece of information.
Right.
So when it says God knew,
It's like in the Garden of
means-
Eden. Like Adam knew.
Adam knew Eve,
Right.
It takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
So God is basically saying, we know each other. Now I could give it to you in writing.
Doesn't but somehow the writing is not going to spoil over time. It's interesting that somehow that knowledge, that knowing each other, is going to be preserved merely in words that are written down.
Preserved in some way. It's preserved in the sense that this will always be relevant to you. But will you be able to find the relevance?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why from time to time we need a Rambam, we need a Hillel, we need a Baal Shem Tov to kind of make that little connection. Not rewrite the Torah, not change the laws. That's not how it stays alive. If you change it, then it's not alive. Then it was temporary. It needs to be replaced with fresh batteries because the old one died.
You know, it's interesting that what evolutionists know, people resist on in the religious realm. I mean, we know in evolution, we say that human beings are unique in that we adapt to our environment, right? Other animals can't live anywhere in the world. A polar bear can't live in Hawaii, right? But we can be Eskimos, we can be Hawaiians, because we adapt, that human ability to adapt. So why is it that we don't accept that when it comes to a teaching? This is an eternal teaching. You would think that over time, it'd be clear we do have to adapt to the teaching, in other words, the eternality of the teaching.
So not that you change the environment, you change yourself according.
That's right.
To
That's right.
Good point. Yeah, good point. So when the Alter Rebbe wrote the Tanya, it was the same issue. If I could come talk to you, then I would get the message loud and clear. But from a book, how is that going to work? So the Rebbe says in his introduction, I am writing this not to an unidentified demographic. I know you, you know me, we've talked, I got it. Now I can write and it'll be effective. And we find that 200 years later, people are still inspired by reading the Tanya to varying degrees and depending on how much you understand of it. But nobody comes away indifferent. So how is this working? How is this happening? I guess that people don't change that much in a short period of time. 200 years?
Yeah, it's not that much.
It's not that much. As much as we think that the last couple of years, the world has changed dramatically. The world has changed dramatically. People have not.
What was the chiddush, the novelty that the Alter Rebbe brought with the Tanya in order to keep the Torah fresh, or in order to keep us fresh, rather, vis-a-vis the Torah?
And there were a number of things, just to touch on them briefly. Number one, we are not meant to be all righteous. That was a revolutionary idea. Because people think in black and white. Good or bad, which are you going to be? You have to make choices. You have a good inclination, the Yetzer Tov, and you have the evil inclination. Which are you going to be? And if you give in to your Yetzer Hara, you give in to the evil inclination, well then, you blew it. That was very frustrating, because it's unrealistic and it's not what the Torah is all about. Although you could get that impression, because Torah speaks about the righteous and the non.
So I guess at that point in history, that idea, that black and white thinking was starting to really ossify, right? Like people were so black and white that he had to shatter that. Is that the idea?
I think so. And it also has to do with religiosity. Every religion has this problem.
What do you mean? What's
black
what do you mean?
and white.
Yeah.
Good or bad.
Right.
Heaven or hell. Which
That's
way?
Right. That's right.
That's it. Those are your options. So either you're good, and then you're okay, or you're not, and then you're gone. You're out of the picture. You're not there when the saints come marching in, because you're not a saint. And this was killing people, literally killing people, who in their utter sincerity were trying to be what they thought they were supposed to be, and it was making them sick, physically sick. One unholy thought and you're finished. You're out of the picture. That's obviously not the kind of world that God created. This is not the kind of expectations that he has. So the first thing is, the average person is not meant to be a tzaddik. Revolutionary statement. The average person is meant to engage the unholy, wrestle with it, and if you wrestle with it, you're going to lose once in a while. But keep wrestling. And then you're doing what you're meant to do. And that's why the whole book, the title of the book, is Sefer Shel Beinoni. This is a book for the moderate person, not the saint, not the sinner, but the way we're supposed to be.